client representation agreements. When we represent the clients, what does that mean?
We are their agent.
Say it louder.
We are their agent.
We are their agents when we are representing the client. Okay. Can we represent just a transaction?
Yes.
Yes, and that is called
Transaction.
transactional broker. Okay, or non-agency, right? Okay, very good. So various types of contracts are used in a typical real estate sales transaction, including the agreement between a broker and the sales associate, the terms by which the broker uses multiple listing system, the contract that allows the broker to list the property for sale, the agreement by which a buyer uses a broker, the sales contract that sets out the terms of the transaction, the escrow, title insurance, and there's other agreements. So there's a bunch of different types of contracts related to real estate transactions, right? So knowing where you stand is very, very important. So representing the seller. If you represent the seller, we covered this also the other day. If you represent the seller, that means you are the listing broker or agent, correct? Listing broker or agent, because you represent the seller. And when I said you're the listing, if you're listing, what are you doing?
Finding a buyer. You work for the seller.
When you're listing, what are you doing? Putting a house on the market. We're not selling, guys. We don't sell. The seller sells. You got to remember that. We provide a service. Okay? The seller sells. Well, thank you, Stephen. We advertise. Put the house on the market, like Masha said, and we advertise. We advertise for what? What is the goal? To find a buyer. Okay? We don't sell. We don't buy. We are the middleman or woman. Or they. Or whatever it can be nowadays. Jennifer says, thank you, everyone. The real truth, I'm trying to take over the school. I'm happy everybody understood the info. I know it's hard with Bruno sending hooks everyone.
That's why Jennifer tell them.
If you want to take over, let's just come on down. Come on down. Don't be on that side. Come here. You make my life so much easier. Go ahead, take over. Then I can focus on the exams for the students and making it harder and harder and harder. Well, the truth is, if I make my exam harder, when you get to the state, it will be like a piece of cake. Yeah.
It's not a good thing.
You know, there's a lot of schools, and I used to work for one of those schools. There's a lot of schools that what they do is at the end of the book, there's a practice exam A and practice exam B. They'll use the previous book's version as their school exam. That's awful. Because they're like basic questions. They're not catered to the actual exam. So that's awful. All right. So that's why I study the questions, create the questions based on that. I get feedback from you guys of what happened in the state exam, where the challenges were. All right. Soon. I see how it is, Miss Ramos. I see how it is. All right. So represent the seller is a listing agreement. And the listing agreement is the broker-seller contract for the broker's professional services that authorizes the broker to represent the principal and the principal's real property to consumers. The broker extends this authorization to the associated licensees to provide brokerage services. So, as you know, the broker is not supposed to be the one knocking on that door, right? That's why we have agents, real estate salespeople, right? That go there on my behalf. Let's say I'm the broker for you guys. You go there on my behalf. What I'm supposed to give you is guidance, support, right? That's it. But you go there on my behalf, and I extend those services to you. So with a few exceptions, the sales associate has pretty much the same authorization as the broker. You are an extension of me. You got it? Whether you are a salesperson or a broker salesperson, you're still a salesperson. So an extension of the broker of Who's the main broker? What is it called? Louder? Broker of record. Very good. So you are an extension of the broker of record. So with that being said, the salesperson is the agent of the broker, and by extension, subagent of the seller. So salesperson is agent of the broker and subagent of the seller. So seller hires the broker, and the broker hired the salesperson, right? So this is the agent and the sub agent. Okay, again, by extension. Agent, sub agent. Good. All right, now types of listing agreements. The broker-client listing agreement determines the rights and obligations of both parties. According to state laws, an exclusive listing agreement must be in writing to be enforced in court. If it's an exclusive listing agreement, it must be in writing. We're going to cover this several times. So there's open listing, does not have to be in writing, but anything that says exclusive, so these next two, exclusive agency and exclusive right to sell, must be in writing. And there's another one that I'm not showing on the screen yet, and I don't want to focus on that one yet, because these three right here are the main types of listing agreements. These are the main types of listing agreements. They are accepted in most states. All right, so a quick synopsis of what these are, and then we'll go in detail. They said it's blurry. It's not blurry there. I'll zoom in for you. Fine. Is it better? Can you read? Hmm? Can't. I was trying to. All right. Open listing. So, open listing says a seller hires multiple brokers. If it's an open listing, you hire multiple brokers. Only the successful listing broker gets paid. And the seller has the right to sell without obligation to pay any listing broker. Okay, so open listing, what I want you guys to think of is that there's no commitment. Okay, so I'm gonna write here. No. All right, so think of it as usually I say an open relationship, right? You're dating somebody, but you're really not dating that somebody. You guys agree to just, hey, let's go hang out with different people. Everything is cool, right? There's no real commitment. So if there's no real commitment, how serious are you? Right? Yeah. All right, so that's what an open listing is. Think about it this way. Alexis, you work for Century 21. Masha, you work for Remax. Steven, you work for Weicker. Lewis, you work for, I don't know, ERA, right? I'm the seller. and I'm going to knock on every door, brokers' doors, and say, hey, Alexis, I want to sell my house, right? If you have a buyer or if you find a buyer, let me know, right? Masha, I'm going to sell my house, right? Louis, I'm going to sell my house. And that's the way we're going to go. There's no real commitment here. I just said, if you find one, let me know, let me know, let me know. No real commitment. So I'm trying to hire multiple. My Alexa just said, no, I work for Amazon. Alexa, you're working against me today. All right. So there's no real commitment, but if any of you find a buyer, I have to pay you. Okay. If you do. If you don't, do I have to pay you? Common sense, right? If you don't, I don't have to pay you. If I find a buyer, right, I have the right to sell without obligation of payment to anyone. So if I find a buyer, so I knocked on several brokerages, no commitment. And then I'm at the example usually I give, I'm at the at a dinner with my family, and my cousin goes like, oh, Bruno, you're selling your property? I want to buy your property. So I found the buyer. The procuring cause, you guys remember this word, the procuring cause was me, right? I procured, I found. Therefore, I don't have to pay anybody. There's no commitment, okay? Got to remember that. Absolutely. All right, next we have exclusive agency and exclusive right to sell. In both of these, the seller hires one broker. So in both of these, what I'm saying, guys, is very simple, right? Alexis, here's the thing. I really like you. You seem to be very professional. I want to work with you in the sale of my home. All right. You're free to go work with the other agencies. You're free to work with other agents that are able to bring you buyers. But I want you to represent me. That's what an exclusive is. So I'm not working with Alexis, working with Masha, working with Louis. No, I'm working just with Alexa directly, and she'll handle everybody else. You got it? Good so far? So exclusive, hired one broker to represent you. Okay. Now, here's where the differences are. Let's go to exclusive agency. And you have to remember this because there are going to be questions in the exam. In exclusive agency, not exclusive right to sell, in exclusive agency, the listing broker is paid only if procuring cause of the sale. So if she brings a buyer, I have to pay. Got it? But just like open listing, I have the right to sell without obligation to pay my listing broker. Okay, so just like open listing, right? That's the feature that's shared between open listing and exclusive agency. If I'm at a dinner table with the family and my cousin says, Bruno, I want to buy your house. Well, guess what? I'm the procuring cause, not you. So do I have to pay you? No. All right. So in this one, I want you to think as we're engaged. Okay. Is that okay, Alexis? Okay. Are you married? Okay. Are you? So you should be okay if we get engaged right now, right? We'll get divorced in a second. So I'm engaged to Alexis right now. That's it. But just like with every engagement, what could happen? Could fall off. Not that a marriage can't, but there's a big difference between being engaged and being married and walking away, right? We're going to talk about this. And Nadia, of course, I was waiting for the hashtag prenup to come up. But here's the thing. In our prenup, it says that you're the one that represents me. So sole representation, right? Just like when you're engaged, you're supposed to be with that one person, not open relationship with multiple people, right? Right. So that one, right? But it says right here, excuse me, Shanice, men can cheat, so can women. Don't do that. It's really bad. Really bad. You forgot that we're in 2022. Yeah. So going back to what I was saying, this is the challenge here. We get to the altar, right? You and I, we get to the altar, and then all of a sudden I found another person.
Dun, dun, dun.
I found a buyer. Down the aisle, I found a buyer. Can I just walk away? Yes, I can. Because if we're engaged, that's it. All I have to lose is the time that we spend together. That's it. Okay? That brings us to marriage. We hired that one. And that one's going to be forever, meaning until the transaction ends, forever in the transaction, right? The listing broker, so in this case, Alexis is going to get paid regardless of who sells the property. I don't have any right, okay, to sell it on my own. Here's what's going to happen. If I, right, we're married now, if I find somebody else, this divorce is going to cost me. Does that make sense? So in the first two, what do I have to lose? Barely anything. Okay, there are consequences. We'll talk about it, like advertising expenses, for instance, that you might have incurred, right? But that's it. In an open listing, nothing, right? But in the marriage, I was so committed that I said, Alexis, no matter what, if I find a buyer or if you find a buyer, no matter what, I'm paying you. That's how committed I am to you, right? But guess what? She's also committed to me, right? Because you have to think, if in these two right here, if in these two, the agent can lose the commission, because I'm working parallel to you, like you're finding a buyer, so am I, and I'm racing, because hopefully I'll find one before you, right? Then what level of commitment am I going to have in these two? Okay, so barely any commitment, some commitment, and supposedly full commitment. Does that make sense? That's how I compare these types of relationships. Open relationship, engaged, married, right? Which one is the most common? So remember agency, we were talking about seller's agent, buyer's agent, disclosure agent, and transaction broker, that we are supposed to tell the buyer or seller how we're supposed to represent them before any motivation, right? Yeah, it's another disclosure that nobody gives. So you have a listing agreement. You know what most of you do? You realtors, yes, you're realtors. You know most of you do? You just check the box. You put the 6% seller sign here. It's normal. It's traditional. Just let's move forward. And all of a sudden, you got yourself an exclusive right to sell without explaining the other options. You are required by law, statutory law, you're required to explain these options. You got it? You are required, the pros and the cons. Anyway, guys, make sure you're with me. I thought I gave the announcements earlier. I see some of you just talking, not even on camera, completely distracted. We're going to do great in the 60-day challenge. Steve says, do I have to accept? Which one? Which one do you have to accept? Nika, I can't see you. Steven and Marotra, I can't see you either. Make sure you guys are with me and not with everybody else around you. All right, Stephen McFadden, you're asking if you have to accept what? You as a client or you as an agent? So it goes both ways before you even answer anything. It goes both ways. They don't have to accept, you don't have to accept anything. Okay? They don't have to accept, you don't have to accept. But if you explain it properly, everybody's going to pick which one? Exclusive right to sell. If you're the seller, you want full representation. You want somebody committed to you. See, Mr. Seller, if you're out there knocking on several doors, then nobody's going to take their time to market your property. They might find out, like blasting an email and find out if anybody's interested in your property, but that's it. They're limited on their reach. Okay. But if you allow me to represent you in an exclusive agency or exclusive right to sell, I can now put it on the MLS or the multiple listing system, right? And I can reach all the realtors in New Jersey that are part of this MLS that might have clients looking for it. So it's not an email blast that I'm doing to my client database. It's I'm posting in a place where they're actually looking for properties like yours. Does that make sense? So the exclusive agency allows me to now put on the MLS, right? Now, here's the other thing, Mr. Seller. I want to be fully committed to you, and whatever your choice might be, I respect that choice. But if I'm going to put work into this, you need to work with me as well, right? So here's what I'm willing to do. And this is where you start defining the services that you provide, right? Now, the services that I provide depend on the type of agency that you choose. If you say exclusive agency, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put on the MLS. I'm going to put on my website. I'm going to post everywhere in my office and advertise to my clients and anybody that might show up. But that's where we're going to stop. Now, yeah, everything is negotiable, but here's the thing. If we get married, if you choose an exclusive right to sell, Mr. Seller, right? I'm still only guaranteed the commission if I sell, regardless. If I sell, I'm guaranteed the commission. But now I know that we are in a serious relationship. Here's what I'm going to do extra. I'm going to do open houses every Sunday. I'm going to go out of my way and door knocking to see if anybody might be interested in your property. I'm going to go above and beyond to get your property out there and get it sold because of your potential needs, right? So depending on the type of agency, it determines what type of service you're going to provide. Because again, in this one, yeah, but you might take it away from me, right? This one, I'm fully committed. It's me and you till the end. Okay? Until the end of the transaction.
Is there an expiration?
No, well, the listing could be a 6-month listing, for instance. Could be a 2-week listing, could be a weekend listing. I've seen crazy stuff. I had a student of mine years ago, when she became licensed, she listened to one of the things I had said in class, and she called me up and said, Bruno, can't believe what I just did. Like what? I put a 2-week listing. I'm like, 2-week listing? What's wrong with you? She's like, no. I heard what you said about commitment, and I'm willing to give 2 weeks, full-blown open houses and everything. And that's what I told the seller. If I cannot do it in 2 weeks, in 2 open houses, I mean 4 because it's Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 open houses, I'll let the seller go. And guess what? That's how I got the listing. Okay, so you only committed on that marriage for 2 weeks. Not bad. They said yes. Okay. Another thing that she did was she marketed the house very cheap. It was like 50K below market price or market value. Now, I don't agree with 50K below. I agree with being just a little below, so there's attraction. But especially at that time, there was a buyer's market, not a seller's market, right? But believe it or not, she got 90,000 above asking price. 90,000. So that's pretty much 40,000 above the value that she had estimated. For the seller, it was great. And she had like, I think the first weekend she had like 9 offers. She started a bidding war. Exactly. Guys, that's what you want, because here's what happened in that from that open house. Here's what happened. Ready? From that open house, she got another, if I recall correctly, another 3 clients. Open houses are not to sell the property. That's what a listing is for. Open houses is to get more clients for the next property. It's the keep on going type of thing. So you piggyback on somebody's house to get more clients. Most sales don't happen in an open house. They happen prior to the open house because there's already somebody, unless your first showing is the open house, there's already somebody looking at the house before you get there. Okay. All right, let's see. Well, negotiable. When is an open listing? Can the broker advertise a listing on another site? Open listings you cannot put on the MLS, but you can do whatever you want. Aside from that, MLS has to be one agent, one brokerage exposing. Can I get full commission if I sell and negotiate half commission if they sell? No. You can try to get a rewards for or compensation for effort, but not half commission. No. Now that's legal. No, you can't. That's legal in New Jersey, but in New York, if you put in a full price offer, I'm lost on that one. If you put a full price offer, it's an acceptance. I'm sorry, not understanding what that means. So if I have 10 people that put a full price offer, the seller must accept. I'm not understanding, sorry, just not understanding what you're trying to say with that. These are the general rules, by the way. They're not state specific. So for now, we're still talking about general, not state. You said the first full price offer is an acceptance. So that means I have to accept the first full price offer that shows up. So if somebody tells me it's $100,000, right? And then another person comes up and it's $101,000, $1,000 more. I have to accept 100 because that's what I asked for. All right, Lacey, if it's an open listing and you're trying to post an ad, do you put your broker's name? So, and that's where the challenge comes, Lacey. If you're the one advertising, then you put your broker's name because you have to. But what's your commitment? What's your, I'm sorry, incentive to pay for advertisement? What's your incentive if they have an open listing? What's the incentive?
I would do it if I don't pay for advertising, like I'll post it on my website, like my personal.
That's what I'm saying. So you'll go everywhere that's free, that pretty much has no exposure.
So then you would have to put still broker. Even if
You
it's
still
like-
have to put it no matter what. We'll go over advertisements as well. All right. All right, and then there's this one. Net listing, illegal in most states. The seller hires one broker, but here's the kicker. The listing broker is paid anything above the seller's desired net amount. So when we go talk to sellers, that's one of the things that we have to do is ask the seller how much he or she is willing to take. Like, what is your expected take home money, right? Because we're going to sell it for 500, but there's commission, there's closing costs, right? There's pending bills that you might have. So what are you expecting to get out of this property? Oh, I need to net at least 350. Okay, so I know we got $150,000 to work with towards commission and closing costs. Does that make sense? So our job is always to know that, because sometimes a property is not sellable. Another question to ask, and we're going to go over that too. Another question to ask is, how much do you owe on mortgages? Like outstanding liens. It's very important, because if you owe more than 350,000, right, it starts narrowing down the amount of money that we have to work with. Property value 500, right? You owe 499, right? How can we put closing costs and commission there? We cannot. So your house is not sellable at this point. All right, so we have to know this stuff. But let's say the seller said 350 is the net. So I'm like, okay, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, here's what I'm willing to do. I think we can get to 350 based on market value. We can get to 350. Anything above that will then be my commission. Would you be okay with that? Right? That's how net listing works. Now, the problem with it and why it's illegal is because of conflict of interest. Can you tell me what the conflict of interest is here? I want everybody to answer this. What is the conflict of interest in the net listing where I say I'll make whatever above your net amount? What is the conflict of interest? Well, it's the commission, but why is it conflict of interest? Why is it conflict of interest? Broker says, Zaya says the broker could be getting more than the seller. Steven says I'm going to undervalue it. Milton says between the owner and the broker. But what is the conflict of interest? To gain more? Yeah. You're getting more, so you would work harder. There's no commission percentage. Conflict is because your priority is not the client. Absolutely. I'm not looking for my client's best interest. I'm looking for mine. So like Steven said as well, I would devalue the property, right? 350? Yeah, sure. I already know the real value. So now I know that I can make up to $150,000 in commission. Now that's a steal for me, right? Does that make sense? So conflict of interest is because I'm putting my interest above the seller's interest, okay? Are you all right there? You're hungry or nervous or what is it?
Bad habit.
I have a nail clipper if you want.
Oh, good, thanks.
All right. Children, cameras. It's tough, tell you. All right. If the broker, you got to sneeze?
So I was going to.
I scared your sneeze away. Sorry,
Thank you.
terrible. All right. If the broker get open listing and the seller agent comes from the same office, how'd they get a commission? Well, that's the agreement on commissions already preset as well. Understand, open listing, exclusive agency, and exclusive right to sell is the type of representation we have. That's it. The commission could be 6%, just like when we talked about transaction broker. Commission could still be 6%, could be 10%, could be 20%. That's negotiable, that's separate. Okay, if it's two agents in the office, it's split between the agents according to their compensation agreement. That's it. All right, so in an open listing, a seller agrees to pay the broker a commission only if he or she procures a buyer for the property. A seller can enter into open listing with any number of brokers. And by the way, this is the key when you read the questions in the state exam. If it says any number of brokers, automatically it's an open listing. If it talks about that one broker, then it could be exclusive agency or exclusive right to sell. All right. Now, the seller is obligated to pay commission only to that broker who successfully produces a ready, willing, and able buyer. And if the seller personally sells the property without the aid of any of the brokers, he or she is not obligated to pay any of them a commission. And because an open listing does not restrict the seller, it does not have to include a termination date. A subsequent exclusive listing with another broker would automatically terminate an open listing. Okay, so if now I'm talking to the person and Masha and she goes like, Bruno, I think the best is that I represent you. And I'm like, you know what? I agree. The moment we sign an exclusive agency, all the other agreements I made independently with the different agencies ends. Okay? You cannot have an open listing and an exclusive. Sorry?
Do you have to notify them?
No. Okay. What I said is that the moment I enter into an exclusive agency with one of the agencies, it automatically terminates the other agreements I made when I went to talk to Weichert, to Remax, and so on, right? All right, exclusive agency. Hold on. Jefferson, let's say you don't go over this, but you are doing the work for the potential buyer. Does that mean that everything is implied? So that's exactly what the problem will be, Jefferson. Thank you for bringing that up. But that's exactly what the problem will be here. Like the buyers, they don't know. The sellers, they don't know. They expect. So if you don't explain, then you became an implied contract. Does that make sense? Right? So yes, you have to explain the stuff, because when I go to court against you, you're the licensee, right? Being licensed, you're upheld to different standards. The court will look at you and say, you lose. Simple, right? Unless it can be proven that I was aware somehow of what the relationship actually entailed. So, and that's another reason why we shouldn't rely on anything verbally. We should always put it in writing. So it clearly shows what our intentions were. Okay. All right. So exclusive agency. In an exclusive agency listing, only one broker, so before it was any, now it's just one, is specifically authorized to act as the exclusive agent of the principal. If any broker brings a buyer, the listing agent still do a commission, which he or she then splits with a selling broker. However, under this form of agreement, if the seller finds a buyer with no help from any broker, the seller retains the right to sell the property himself, again, without obligation to the broker. So we already covered this in this table. I'm just now reading the text. Exclusive right to sell listing. In an exclusive right to sell, and guys, believe it or not, a lot of you fail in these questions, in the difference between exclusive agency and exclusive right to sell. So make sure you understand the difference between them. Exclusive agency, one, because it's exclusive, but anybody can sell, meaning it could be the seller or the agency. The exclusive right to sell, meaning only the agency. Okay, exclusive right to sell, only the agency can sell. So if the seller brings a buyer, no matter what, the agency has to get paid. So regardless of who sells the property, that's what it is. The seller must pay the commission regardless. Okay. All right, net listing, I already told you it's illegal. So net listing provision states that the seller receives a net amount with the excess going to the listing broker as commission. The broker is free to sell the property at any price above the agreed upon net amount. And a net listing can create a conflict of interest between that of the broker's fiduciary responsibility to the seller and the broker's profit motive, and therefore it is either illegal in many states or discouraged in others. All right. Next thing you have is the MLS, or multiple listing services. One second. Got to lower the sound a bit. Yes, in New Jersey it's illegal. No. All right. So what is MLS? Multiple listing system. If you guys see what I wrote in front of it, it says cooperating listings. MLS, I call this the Craigslist for realtors. It's where we realtors advertise to other realtors. Pretty much that's what it is. As realtors, we advertise to other realtors. So the MLS is a marketing organization whose broker members make their exclusive listings available through other member brokers. Exclusive listings can include multiple listing clauses that the seller's written consent allow a broker to list a property on the MLS. So just because you got a listing doesn't mean you can put on MLS. There's a checkbox on the listing agreement that says, please place my property on the MLS as well. Brokers, sellers, and buyers, they benefit from the MLS. Brokers because they develop a larger inventory of properties and are guaranteed a portion of the sales commission if one of their listings is sold by a participating broker, or if they sell another broker's listing. Property owners benefit from a larger market, and buyers benefit from more options, obviously. So everybody benefits from the MLS. Now, MLS member broker contracts, contractual obligations, they vary. Most MLS organizations require the brokers to submit new listings within a specific short period of time after the listing agreement is signed. Some MLSs allow brokers only 48 hours to submit a listing, and others as much as 5 days. What does this mean? That we come into a verbal agreement. Okay, so let's see who I'm going to pick on that's not on camera. Let's see. Or just walking around. All right, Nika, you're going to be the one. I can barely see you. So I'm going to go sit down with you at a cafe because we're friends and we're just connecting. Like, hey, tomorrow, 9 o'clock in the morning, let's have some coffee, right? So Nika, we meet up at a cafe and you say, Bruno, I've been interested in selling my home. What do you think? Is now a right time? And as a good realtor, I'm going to tell you that it's always the right time. It just depends on your needs, but it is always the right time to sell. It depends on your needs, right? So Nika says, yeah, well, I got a new job and I need to relocate. You know, I still got a few months, but I think I need to sell the house now. I don't think I want to keep it as a rental. I just want to move and be done with it. Like, great. I know your house inside out, so I can put it on the MLS right now. So while we're at the cafe, I can put on the MLS, but I have nothing in writing. Okay. One of the things that New Jersey says, and we're not going over New Jersey right now, but as an example, New Jersey says that I have 5 days to put it in writing. Okay. But that's different. That's different from having it in writing and putting it on the MLS. The MLS says, so now it's not Jersey, it's the MLS rules. MLS says here in New Jersey, almost all the MLSs say you got 48 hours from signing the listing to advertise to the public. So if I sat down with Nika at her house, right? And she said, Bruno, I want to sell the property. And I said, hey, luckily I always have a piece of paper with me that says listing agreement, right? If you're a good realtor, you always have one with you, or a tablet where you can fill out, or a computer where you can fill out everything on the spot, right? So that's what it is. I'm right there, boom, we sign it. How long do I have to put on the MLS? So like I said, most MLSs in Jersey, you got 48 hours. It could be as much as 5 days. That's an MLS agreement, is not state law. So state laws vary. MLS agreements also vary. You guys good? Let me know in the chat if you're good. Let me go. Write something in the chat. Something. Yeah. All right. Few people still did not write it. Let's see. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 16, 17, 28, 29, 30. I'm gonna cut those fingers.
I'm almost done. I only have 2 more.
All right. She's hungry. She's eating a.
I really am hungry.
Nails. All right. So some of you already filled the test. I asked you to write something, and some of you are like, good, here. Xiaozhu, thank you for the the flowers. Nadia for the smiley face. They failed the test. There was 4 options, right? And I wanted you to write something. All right, Zoraida says I don't get the 5 days. So we're not talking about Jersey yet, and this is not Jersey. We're talking about MLSs. An MLS cannot go against the state law, but MLS is a multiple listing service or system. It's a marketing system where we list our properties for sale, our clients' properties for sale. So the terms vary depending on the MLS agreement. Okay. Some MLSs, like I said, require, and guys, this part is not going to be on the test. It's just for you to understand that from MLS to MLS, it changes. When we get to the state portion, I will address again the New Jersey rules, and the MLSs comply with those rules here in Jersey. If we were in California, I would tell you that in California, because they allow up to 5 days as an example, then the MLSs would also allow till 5 days. Are you guys understanding this? So the MLS cannot go against the state rule, right? But they can make stricter rules. If the state says up to, they can make their own rules stricter. They cannot go and say, hey, up to 10 days. No, max is up to 5. If it's my MLS and I say 24 hours, you got 24 hours if you want to be part of my MLS. Does that make sense? All right. So in this case, we're just talking about what an MLS is. An MLS is a marketing organization where we get to market properties to other members. That's all it is. And each MLS has their own rules. Some, you have to put that listing, signed listing, in as quick as 48 hours. Others as much as 5 days. That's all it is. So it has nothing to do with the state. We're talking about the MLS itself. Now, most MLSs, a broker offers cooperation and compensation to other members. This offer is accepted when a cooperating broker brings a buyer to the seller. Okay. So if I offer a certain amount to whoever brings a buyer, right? When you bring a buyer, you accept it. There's no more negotiations, what we said here. I mean, can we negotiate later on? Yes, but you're accepting what I'm offering. Okay. So I secured a 7% commission, let's say, as an example. That's what I secured. 7%. But on the MLS, if you guys remember, I showed this the other day to you guys. I went on the GSMLS and I showed this. It shows a listing agent. So let's say me might offer, right, the following. So I might offer to whoever represents the buyer as a buyer's broker, I'm going to offer 2.5% minus 150, which we call MLS fees or listing fees. If you're operating as a sub-agent, I don't want you. I'm not working with somebody that wants to operate as a sub-agent. If you're operating as a transaction broker, hey, all I'm paying as a transaction broker, all I'm paying is 2%. So remember, if you represent your clients, if you're the agent for the buyer, I'm paying 2.5%. Because now you're taking on a different level of liability and responsibility. I know you're going to educate your clients a little bit more. As a transaction broker, I think I'm going to be doing a lot more work and this deal might not go through. I don't know. I'm just scared. So I'll pay less because I'm going to do most of the work for you. Right? So it's whatever we want. We have to tell the seller, hey, Mr. Seller, this is what I plan on paying whoever brings a buyer. I'm going to split my fee this way. You got it? We still have to disclose that because it's part of the listing agreement. You guys good? All right. Now, how do we terminate the seller representation? How does it end?
The sales.
Hopefully, success. Hopefully success. That means the sale completed. The seller's happy because the sale happened. The buyer's happy because the purchase happened. And we're happy because?
Got paid.
No, because the sale happened. One more success story. And we got paid. and we got paid. Always remember that. And we got paid. And we got paid, always. Okay? The property owner cannot force the broker to perform, but failure to follow fiduciary duties or the quality of work expected from a licensee breaches the listing agreement. So if you're not doing your part, I cannot force you to, but I'm not obligated to continue this relationship. So I can say, hey, Nashua, you're not doing your part. So it's over. Terminate the contract. You got it? The seller may sue the broker if the listing is canceled by the broker. So if I walk away and I say, Elvis, I'm not working with you anymore, I'm walking away, right? The seller can sue, so Elvis can sue me in this case. All right, if the property owner refuses to cooperate with reasonable requests, such as showing the property to prospective buyers or proceeding with an accepted sales contract, the broker can attempt to recover damages. So if I'm doing my job and you guys are not doing yours, like you, the seller, or you, the buyer, or whatever, I always have the option of trying to recover some of the money that I've spent.
Probably a good lawsuit.
It will be like a lawsuit, yeah. Now, I can tell you guys, most of the times, we just move on to the next. Thank you, next. That's it. Because lawsuits, they take time and money, right? So most of the time, we just take the L and keep moving. This is why it's so important to have more than one deal. Some of you guys, when you become newbies, as soon as you get a license, some of you guys, you get your first deal, you hold on to that contract like, oh, like it's the best thing in the world, and don't leave me, right? That one contract, you just marry the contract, right? No, congratulations on getting your first one. Go get 10 more. Because if this falls through, you become heartbroken. That first love in real estate falls through, you become heartbroken. Do you guys know that most realtors, they quit in their very first year? Heartbroken. Okay? Yeah. It sucks. That's why we got to have good team behind, great mentorship, and mental support. Because it's not easy. Okay? It's very profitable. It's not easy. Jennifer says the first love is hard. I know. That puppy love. Anyway. All right. Broker's agreement to represent the property seller may terminate for the following reasons: performance, infeasibility, mutual agreement, revocation, abandonment, breach, lapse of time, invalidity of contract, incapacitation, or death of either party, involuntary title transfer, or destruction of the property. Pretty self-explanatory. You guys can go over this on your own, but these are some of the reasons that can also terminate the contract. Yeah. So speaking of expiration, listing expires. Speaking of expiration, Jennifer says, my first love in real estate, we stayed really good friends. I thought she was going to say something else, like the way the sentence started, my first love in real estate, we married. Just friends? And you're friend zoned. There you go. All right. Expiration of the listing period. So exclusive listings should specify the broker's employment period because you're being employed, right, by the seller. In most states, failing to specify listings end date is grounds for license suspension or revocation. So if you have anything exclusive, there has to be an end date to that. So start date, end date to that agreement. Okay. Legislators and courts have banned the use of automatic extension clauses in exclusive listings, such as a starting period of 90 days that continues thereafter until terminated by either party, hereto by 30 days, notice in writing. So this used to happen. It's not as common anymore, and most states do not allow this at all. You cannot automatically extend the listing. You have to go there, sit down with the person and say, hey, here's what happened. Here's what we need to do. Are you okay with renewing the listing agreement? That's it. Okay, not automatic. So they banned automatic extension clauses. Okay. Now, in some states, extension clauses are illegal, and many listing contract forms must state that there can be no automatic extension. Now, to protect brokers, this is one of the things, there's a few here, but this is one of the things that I added that they asked this question in a lot of state exams. So I added to our book. If you ever studied this course before with the Dearborn edition or the previous book that I was using, or even the Kovacs book, this is one of the things that's not mentioned in any of those pages. Yet it is a question in the exam. So again, I get the feedback. You guys come from the exam and say, Bruno, there's something there that I never studied before. 99% of the times, you just don't remember that you studied. 99. But true story, right? But there's that chance of one question, and this was one of them. After a while, I had a few people asking me about the tail end clause, right? You did the test?
Yeah.
So you know, tail end clause, right? And I'm like, well, tail end clause is just a broker protection clause. I actually knew it, but yeah, we never talked about it in any of the books. But here it is. So again, another proof of what I'm trying to do. Include the stuff that's in the actual exam. Exclude the stuff that you might not need to know, at least not now. Some of the stuff I still have to put it regardless of being in the exam or not. All right, but this one, definitely in the exam. To protect brokers, some listing agreements have what is known as a broker protection clause, also known as extension clause or tail provision. The broker protection clause provides that if the owner contracts to sell the property with the buyer who was procured by the broker within a specified period of time after the expiration, right here, specified period of time after the expiration of the listing agreement, okay, then full commission is owed. So all we're saying is, if I introduce you, the buyer and the seller, right? But the contract only started after the expiration date. Am I entitled to commission? Yeah, because I'm the procuring cause. So this prevents the unjust situation where, due to the broker's marketing efforts, a buyer contracts to purchase the property after the listing expires, and the broker receives no compensation for his or her services. I'm like, who introduced you guys? How did you get here? You knew about this property because I listed it, because I marketed it, because I'm whatever, right? If you came because you just found out about it through other means, I'm not owed commission because the listing expired. But if it was during my marketing period, but the contract came to be after, I'm still entitled to commission. Okay. I did see it on the exam, and my old real estate teacher taught it. Good. Now try to find it in the book and let me know. So that's what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of there's good instructors out there, and there's a lot of just read the book and whatever they have to, just keep moving. Right. So Jennifer mentioned that she mentioned in the morning class as well. That goes another example of going above and beyond. Try to get focused on the exam versus just text that we have to teach. You know. Okay. Listing presentation. What do you guys think a listing presentation is without reading? I thought you only had two more. I thought you only had two more. You've been there for like half an hour. It's not an open house, no. What do you think a listing presentation is without reading? When I ask questions, it's always without reading. I want to know what you feel about it. What's like when you hear these words, what does it mean to you? A showing. Nope. The ad or posting. Nope.
It's real estate agents first look at the property.
Because you read First Chance.
I just read First Chance.
Okay.
The rest is context.
All right. So here's the thing. Description of the listing, no. How's it being shown in MLS? No. Katie, presentation to your client of the selling process. Yes. So a listing presentation is actually like a marketing interview. Listing presentation, when you hear listing presentation, that means I went to knock on that door and I said, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, I would like an opportunity to sell your property. Let me show you how I would do it. So listing presentation is when you first sit down with a client in the house, see all the good, the bad of the house, know all the good or the bad of the clients or customers, right? And come up with a strategy. So the property owner's first chance to learn what a real estate brokerage can do to market and sell their property is during a listing presentation. The salesperson describes the brokerage marketing efforts to sell the property as quickly as possible. Now, a sales associate and prospective seller discuss many issues before initiating a contract. The selling price and net proceeds are usually the property owner's main concerns, right? How much we're going to sell for? How much am I going to get in my pocket? Like, I don't care about anything else. The house is falling apart, but I just want to know what's mine, right? Now, the sales associate should have performed a comparative market analysis, or CMA, also called competitive market analysis, and be prepared to discuss the property's likely value range and the charges that affect the seller's proceeds. So it is our job, right? It is our job to say, hey, your property is worth anywhere between, let's say, a $750,000 and $800,000, anywhere between that. But don't forget, you have closing costs, which on average is a percentage, the next percentage in this area of the property sale minus my commission as well. So you should take home roughly this much. You got it? It is our job to know that and advise our client, because again, the house might not be sellable. We talked about it, right? The CMA is not a formal appraisal. This is very important. We're going to learn about appraisals in a different chapter. It's not a formal appraisal, which must meet separate licensing and other requirements. Instead, it looks at properties similar to the seller's property in size, location, and amenities. And the sales associate can examine the MLS data to determine asking prices of current available, recently sold properties, and expired property listings. So we're going to look at what's for sale, what sold, and what did not sell, what expired, right? Question. Why would we look at expired? Go.
And it helps us assess what not to do, like,
It helps us assess what not to do, okay?
like,
And
for example, the listing expired, it's too expensive for the square miles, or like, why did it expire and what can we do to avoid ours expiring?
exactly. So looking at expiration, right? 9 out of 10 times it has to do with being overpriced. It did not sell because it did not get offers. And I can tell you confidently, like Stephen also wrote pricing. I can tell confidently that 9 out of 10 times it is the pricing. Sometimes it's just the seller did not cooperate, or you as a realtor really suck. But but 9 out of 10 times is pricing. If it's not appealing, or if you did not do your comps properly, then you overprice the property. When you overprice, property does not sell. Okay, unless we're in the crazy market that we were until March, right? For the past 2 years until March, then everything could be overpriced and they'd still pay more for it, right? So this information should help the seller set a fair asking price. The owner usually wants to know how quickly the property can sell, what services the broker provides, and if the property is ready to show to buyers or if improvements are needed. This is the licensee's chance to explain the different types of listing agreements, the implications of different agency relationships, and the broker's marketing services and other services such as staging the property to make it more attractive, that could help market the property effectively. Yeah, good. A sales associate also asks the homeowner several questions regarding property information and any sale-related concerns. Now, here's some information that's needed for a listing agreement. And guys, I'm not gonna go over all of them, but it's common sense that the more you get about the property, the easier the sale will be, right? The more information you get about the property, the easier the sale will be. Why? Because the more you get about the property, the more you can disclose about the property, and the better informed these potential cooperating brokers are. You got it? Then they can tell their clients. Like one of the things that I never understood is why listing agents omit information. Like for instance, a property is in the flood zone. Just let me know it's in the flood zone. In fact, let me know what's the average bill that the seller is paying for the flood insurance. Give me an idea, give me a range, because that all goes into consideration when I'm buying a property, right? But then some people are like, well, but if I put flood zone, nobody's going to show up. Like, yeah, if you don't put that the house is pink, right? People that want to buy a pink house won't show up either because they're not looking for a house. They're looking for a pink house, right? You have to disclose this stuff.
And either way, they're gonna find out later. Just don't waste
And
your time.
exactly, they're going to find out later. And then everybody wasted their time. Imagine I put an offer. These are true situations, guys. I put an offer, right? As an example, I put an offer. And a couple of weeks later, we're going through inspections, we're going through appraisals and all that stuff. And all of a sudden the lender goes like, hey, like it's been a couple of weeks, like almost a month. Hey, we just noticed that the property is in the flood zone, so we need an elevation certificate. We need to know what is it rated as. And we need to have an insurance commitment, or at least a quote. Right? And all of a sudden you're like, flood what? You know that they're like, it's as much as the listing agent's fault as it is the selling agent's fault. We should do the research. We should do the research before we show the property. In fact, especially if it's in an area that I know, like I was talking to the loan officer for one of my clients a year ago. And the guy wanted to buy the property in Keensburg area, right? By the shore. So I'm almost sure, right? I'm almost sure that most of it is flood zone. Most of it. There are some areas that are not, but it makes it very difficult for me to find properties that are not in the flood zone. So the loan officer told me, hey, we need to account for like $400 a month on average. So we need to account for that unless you can get me an actual quote for the insurance of that property, right? Guess what? Now I'm looking at all the properties on the MLS and I'm comparing to the flood zone map to see if they're in the flood zone or not. And I'm crossing out the ones that are in the flood zone. Out of like 100 properties, I would only show like 5 or 6 properties because that area was, you see what I'm saying? But the listing agent should have already like, hey, flood zone. Seller is paying X amount of dollars a year in insurance or a month in insurance. You got it? Milton says, how to sell a house in flooding zone, lower price? Well, yeah, if you're in the flood zone, most likely the house is going to be a little cheaper. Unless it's a lake that comes with the house. Then the house is a little bit more expensive because it has its own private lake.
My parents bought a house and it's in a flood zone, but it has access to a private lake,
Mhm.
so it kind of balances,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah.
See? All right, so we need to know this information, whether you're on the listing side or on your buying side. But as a listing agent, get as much info as you can to avoid not only liability, but also legal liability, but also wasting everybody's time. Here's some of the information you need. Names of the parties, right? Street address and description of the property, size, type, and age, number of rooms, dimension lots, existing loans, including loan balance, actual interest rate, all that stuff we need to know. Possibility of seller financing, something that nobody asks, by the way. It's not for state exam, but nobody ever, like I would say probably less than 10% of the agents out there, Mr. Seller, it looks like you don't owe much on your mortgage. Would you consider, if I found a buyer that's willing to buy your property and has enough down payment, would you consider seller financing? Right? So especially with the higher interest rates right now, some people cannot afford to get a loan through the bank, but maybe would work with you where you make more money in the long run, right? You're just holding a note. Are you guys understanding? But a lot of people don't ask this. Gotta ask, would you consider? Right? They're entitled to say no, everything's negotiable, we know that. But ask. You ever heard that term, ask and you shall receive? Great. If you don't receive, but at least you asked. Now you know. All right, zoning classification, taxes, very important to know the taxes, neighborhood amenities, real property to be removed from the premises, or personal property to be included in the sale, very important. All right, any information that will make the property more appealing and marketable should also be included, as should any required disclosures regarding the property's condition. Speaking of disclosures, most states require licensees to disclose whose interests they represent. That was chapter 9, agency, right? So the seller should know the company's policies on single agency, buyer agency, dual agency, and other forms of legal representation allowed by state laws. State law may require written acknowledgement of agency disclosure and seller's agreement to a stated representation. So we did talk about this again, chapter 9. Jennifer says, Bruno, I'm asking for money. Can you give it to me? Sure. I'll have it on my desk when you come in tomorrow. I'll have money for you. That's it. Ask and you shall receive. You got it? She said she's asking for money. Her biggest mistake was one thing that people need to ask. You need to be specific on your goals. She didn't say how much money. So that's it. Now I'm putting whatever money I want. If I put 25 cents, that's what you're getting, Jennifer. Louis, yes, sure. Come to the office. I'll give money to everybody. But nobody said how much.
Can I get $100?
$100? You're asking or you're telling me?
And yes.
Micah says a penny each. There you go. All right. Shanice says, I'm saying how much? 100K. Please, you're always in these cruises and then, you know, flying here, flying there. You're just traveling all the time, Shanice. And I'm the one that needs to ask you for money. Every time I see something from Shanice, she's all like doing something somewhere else, not in Jersey. She's out of here. She's living the life. There you go. Steven says, I like money. I like money too. Can I just get the book about money? All right, disclosures. Most states require the, by the way, Nadia, I'm still waiting on something that you owe me for a very long time. So no, you're not getting anything from me. Okay. Ask and you shall exchange. So bring what you're supposed to bring, and then I'll give it to you. All right, homeowners are required to disclose their property, structural, mechanical, and other conditions to help buyers make informed decisions. State law often requires property owners to complete standardized property condition disclosure statement forms that ask about the condition of property features such as heating and plumbing systems. We also discussed this already, right, in disclosures. An agent should always advise a property owner to be truthful to avoid fraudulent or careless misrepresentations, as they might result in future litigation. You guys remember this? We did talk about misrepresentation. We have intentional, which is fraud, honest, which is like being careless, right? And we have innocent, where we didn't know. Okay. While not responsible for investigating the seller's property disclosures, the licensee may not conceal property defects that should be easily noticeable. And Nadia says, I'll head to Newark soon. Well, I don't know what time you're coming, but in a little bit, I'm out. All right, listing contracts. Most states allow real estate agent to go over the terms of a pre-printed contract to a client without risking a charge of illegally practicing law. As you guys know, we cannot discuss legal terms because we are not lawyers or attorneys. Anything that's discussion of the legal terms could be construed as unauthorized practice of law, and you can get sued and even arrested for committing that type of fraud. Okay, but we do have contracts that we fill in the blanks, right? explaining the contracts, the contents of the contract is okay. Hey, here is where we put your name. Here's where we put the seller's name or the buyer's name. Here's where we put the offer, and explain what we're reading. But we always advise to consult with an attorney. Listing agreement provisions. With little variation, most real estate transactions require the same minimum contract considerations. So from all contracts from state to state, or even within the state, the different types of contracts have the same considerations. Contract parties' names. So all the parties to the contract, to the listing, must be in the contract, obviously, right? The name of the brokerage. Some of the stuff I'm just going to skip because it's self-explanatory and you can read on your own. Brokerage firm, who you represent, obviously. Description of the premises. All right, the real property description. Can you guys tell me without reading, okay, top of your head, what are the legal descriptions, authorized legal descriptions of the property? Meets and bounds, lot and block,
Rectangular government. Or something like that.
something like that, right? Rectangular survey method or government, right? Good. The listing price, obviously the listing agreement has to have what? The asking price, which is the listing price, how much the seller wants, right? Okay. It's a negotiating starting point, not exactly the final purchase price, as you know, could be more, could be less. Unpaid taxes, special assessments, mortgage debts, and seller's closing costs and brokerage fees, as well as other obligations, reduce the seller's proceeds. If this is a short sale, which we'll talk about in a different chapter more in detail, the seller's property current lien holder, so the lender, must approve. And that fact should be marketed. So if the property is pending, in fact, on the MLS, there's an option that when you're searching, right, you want to exclude or include, depending on what your client is looking for, exclude or exclude properties that require lender's approval. Okay, because the short sale, there's nothing short about that sale. It takes forever. Okay. Guys, cameras, be on camera. Be on camera. I don't see Nashra. I don't see Elizabeth. Joshua, I can barely see you. Samaya, I can barely see you. I only see like foreheads. Amir, I can barely see you. Randy, I don't see you at all. It's tough. All right. Obviously, you should specify the broker's duties and authorities. So what I can do for you, right? The broker's compensation has to be in that listing agreement. That's obvious. And how much we're going to split with somebody else. Quickly, how do we calculate the sales price, commission, and nets to the seller? So these are some variations of the same calculation. It's also always based on what we have here. This is based on sales price and commission and the commission rate. So when the property sells, the sales price equals 100% of the money being transferred. If a broker is to receive a 5% commission, then 95% remains to the seller, right? Other expenses and equity. To calculate a commission using a sales price of $325, commission rate of 5%, right? All we do is multiply these two, and we know that we're receiving $16,000 commission, gross commission. That's not what we get in our pocket. That's the gross commission on this sale, and then we split. And then we split with the, if I'm the broker, split with the other broker, and then each one of us splits with our agents. All right. To calculate the sales price using commission of $16,000 and a commission rate of 6%, we divide the commission. So 16,000 divided by 6%, the property sold for $270. So all I'm trying to show you here, guys, and you can go over this on your own, is the variations, depending on what the question is asking. A property sold for $325,000 with a commission rate of 5%. how much did the brokerage get? They got 16,000. A property gave 16,000, property sale gave $16,000 to the brokerage, right? At a 6% commission. What was the sales price? So these are the variations of the questions. You either multiply, and again, we have a math chapter for this. So now it's just a quick reference. We either multiply or we divide. If you have the commission value, you have the sales price, and you want to find out the rate, commission value divided by the sales price gives you the rate. To calculate the net to the seller, using the sales price of $125,000 and a commission rate of 4%, right? We multiply the sales price by 100 minus the commission rate. Why? Because like we said, this is 100%. The sales price is 100%. The commission, what we get paid, was 4%, right? So we have to deduct that 4%. So technically, 96% is what's left. How much does the seller get? 125,000 times 96%. They get 120,000. That's not what they take home. It's what they get after commission. Okay, it's what they get after commission. And then let's say there's $10,000 in closing costs. So they get 110. Oh, they didn't pay their taxes. They got to pay the taxes. So now it's down to 102. They have an outstanding water bill. So these are adjustments that are going to happen along the way. Okay. Everything's settled at closing though. All right. Another disclosure, real property and personal property, real property and personal property. What's the difference between these two? Movable or immovable, right? So real property is immovable and personal property is movable. Why do we need to know the difference between these and what do we need to disclose? Well, we need to find out what's included or excluded from the sale, what goes with the house or what's removed from the house. Okay, very, very important. Leased equipment. Not as much for state exam, but I did include here for me to point out something that's very, very important. It's been becoming more and more common that people lease stuff for their house instead of buying. Okay, so any leased equipment that is expected to remain on the property after the sale, such as a security system, cable television boxes, water softener, and specialized antennas, must be identified. The seller is required to inform the equipment's lessor, so whoever allowed you to lease or rent the equipment, of the change in ownership, and very important, determine if the lease can be transferred. A lot of these cannot be transferred. Okay. A controversial example that's becoming more frequently known is solar panels. A lot of people are getting leases on solar panels so they can have those savings on the electrical bill, right? But then 5 years later, they decide to sell. They have like a 20-year plan. 5 years later, they decide to sell. This true story happened to one of my agents not too long ago, right? Property was sold, right? Now, apparently, the lease was supposed to be transferred, but the seller never transferred the lease. The buyer never received the bill. So now we're 3 months later, and the leasing company wants to go pull the solar panels out of the property, saying that the lease is over because you defaulted. And the buyer is like, whoa, wait a minute. I was waiting for that transfer paperwork. Do you guys understand? Now, the buyer's at fault because if you know you got a bill to pay, you don't just wait, right? You don't just wait because for them to remove, they could damage it. So you don't just wait. You have to go after. It's your interest. But now they're calling the realtors. Like, my job was to disclose that there are solar panels, and my job is to disclose that there's a lease that needs to be handled. It's not my job as a realtor to call the lessor and say, hey, solar panel company, I represent the seller and the seller needs to transfer the lease. Like, who are you? as a realtor, we have no authority over somebody else's contracts. You guys understand? So yes, it was negligence, July, exactly. Negligence on both sides. But just because the solar panels are leased and they're there, doesn't mean that it's transferable. You have to ask. Okay. We have to have proposed buyer, closing and buyer possession dates. Where the closing is going to happen, obviously. Any information on encumbrances, these are supposed to be paid in full or assumed by the buyer at closing. So at closing, we either settle all the encumbrance bills or the seller or the buyer takes over these encumbrance bills. Okay. Home warranty program. We do this with the sellers. We say, hey, to make your property more appealing, one of the things that you should do is get a home warranty program. It covers during the listing period and contract period until closing. And from there on, the buyer has 1 year of home warranty and they can renew at their own will, right? But you're offering the property with a warranty, right? It's like buying a used car. Do you prefer with or without warranty? With, right? So in this case, it's the same thing. We're offering the property with a warranty. On certain items, of course, limited as well, right? Warranties by the owner. So these are the assurances by the warranty or disclosures. Is the property suitable for its intended purpose? Does it comply with the appropriate zoning and building codes? So the thing that we were talking about, putting a dental office or the dog grooming place, right? You need to know if you're using the property for the proper purpose. Just because somebody's using it as a business doesn't mean that it's allowed. Okay. Indemnification or hold harmless wording. The seller and broker may agree to indemnify and hold each other harmless from any claims arising from any misrepresentation made by either party. Indemnification might be provided whether or not mistakes were deliberate. We have a non-discrimination disclosure, which obviously says, Mr. Seller, you can't discriminate. We're going to show to whoever we need to show as long as they qualify to buy. Okay. Yes.
Can you explain?
Indemnification. So I'm going to have to pay you for any damages. Indemnify you or pay you for any damages occurred. Me, the seller, or the broker. Like whatever representations are made, they're made. Okay. So indemnification always has to do with compensation for any liability. Guys, I am going to start kicking people out. If you guys are not on camera, if I cannot see you, if you're walking around, I'm going to kick you out. I have a few people that I've said already several times. I cannot see your face. If I don't see your face, I don't know you're there. If I don't know you're there, I'm kicking you out. Okay, I need to see your face. So please stand up, put your face in that little rectangle that's right in front of you, just like mine is. Imagine I'm teaching you guys like this. Let me go over here. Like you still see me, but you hear a voice, and that's it. Okay, guys, I could literally put this on replay and not have to worry about being here or worry about you. Randy, I don't see you. Shall I, if you can, just put a light on? Like you guys have no light. Jefferson, you have no light on, but you're close to it. Stephen, I can barely see you. Amir, you have that background. I know you're in space somewhere. All right. Another thing that's required, signature of the parties. If it's in writing, must be signed. That's all you got to remember. If something is in writing, must be signed. Okay. Now, what is someone, like someone that must be, that must sign, okay, but maybe is not a party to the contract? Give me an example of somebody that must sign, but maybe is not a party to the contract. Someone that must sign the document, but maybe is not a party to the contract. No, that must sign. that must sign. See, everybody that's a party to the contract, sellers and buyers, landlords and tenants, must sign. There's somebody, Elizabeth for the win, the spouse. The spouse. Okay, the property's under my name, not under my wife's name, but you might have to sign to release what? What do they need to release? What rights do they need to release? Dower or courtesy, very good. Ooh. All right. Real quick, representing the buyer, it's exactly the same as representing the seller. That means you're exclusive representation of that buyer, okay? Now, right above termination of buyer representation, I just want to point out, although the seller usually agreed to cover both broker's compensation, compensation should still be discussed with the buyer. So, as I showed you, the seller could have given me 7% and I'm offering you 2.5%. You're not going to you cannot charge your buyer commission because you're getting paid already. Okay? But remember I said sub-agent 0, you could say transaction broker 0. If it says 0, then meaning you're not getting that portion of compensation, then you can tell the buyer, hey, buyer, the way our contract's set up, seller is not willing to pay, so you might have to pay, and this is what I expect, right? You can give a flat fee, an hourly rate, or a percentage as well. That's totally up to you and the buyer. Everything being negotiable, of course, okay? But as in any brokerage agreement, compensation does not determine the party's relationship. Meaning, just because you're paying me doesn't mean I'm your agent. Okay? So if you're getting paid by the seller, you're not the seller's agent. You could be the buyer's agent. Okay, remember that. No, Jefferson, because the seller's agent or the listing agent has their agreement in getting their side of the payment. What we see on the MLS is how much you would get. So whatever you negotiate with the buyer is to pay you. Unless it's explicit somewhere that is the buyer's responsibility to pay commission. Okay. All right. When do you terminate a buyer's agreement? Obviously, same as with the listing, when you fulfilled, closed, right? Or the agreement expired, or we agreed to cancel, or whatever reason. And if the transaction fails to no fault of the buyer or the buyer's broker, the representation survives provided agreement's term has not expired.